Okay, I just wanted to put together this video to go over a few of the finer points about using the PlayStation 4 in a tournament setting. Specifically, I want to go over a few things about wireless controllers and how to prevent them from interrupting your tournament match, because a lot of players aren't really familiar with this process. Even some veteran players, even some bracket runners that I've seen, so it doesn't hurt to put together a refresher course to help you guys out and make sure that nobody accidentally interrupts your match. This applies no matter what kind of controller that you use, whether you use a wireless controller like the Dualshock, or even a wired stick, a wired pad, a hitbox, whatever. Like, this is all important things for you to know, so I hope you stick around and watch it. I have up on the screen the Bluetooth devices menu for the PlayStation, just to demonstrate that there are no wireless controllers currently hooked up to this console. All I have plugged in there on the USB port is this wired pad. It could just as easily be a wired stick or anything else. And I'm going to go ahead and start a game. And let's say that we're in a tournament setting. Player 1 is using this wired pad that I have here, and his opponent is going to walk up and hook up a Dualshock controller or other wireless pad. Just plug in the sync cable, hit the PlayStation button, select my player profile, and we pick our characters and we get into a match and we start playing the game. Like, both controllers are hooked up. Let's say we finish our match, the Dualshock player loses, so we shake hands, say good game, and like a responsible controller user, I'm going to go into the devices menu over here on the quick menu and turn off my controller. I'm going to unplug my pad, go walk off and enjoy the rest of the event. I'll go ahead and pause the match while I'm here. And let's say that the next opponent walks up to the station and he's using another wired controller or another wired stick. Plugs it into the system, brings up the sign-in screen, signs into the account. Both these players pick their characters and get straight back into the game. Now again, like I showed just a moment ago, the Dualshock player turned off his controller before he walked away. But if that same player happens to toss his Dualshock into his bag and accidentally bumps it up against something and it hits the PlayStation button, it'll still sync to the system and it'll still bring up this menu and it will still interrupt this match. So even though he did what he was supposed to do, his controller still caused an issue. So the question is, how do you prevent that? And that's what I'm going to demonstrate here real quick. Now let's rewind a little bit and pretend that the wired pad user and the Dualshock user are still in their first match. And again, the Dualshock player loses, goes into the quick menu, turns off his controller like he's supposed to, walks away. Now, in order to keep his controller from interrupting the next match, what the next player is supposed to do, the next opponent, when he goes to the console, sits down and plugs in his controller, before he starts his tournament match, what he needs to do is tap the PlayStation button, well, after he signs in. So he signs in, he brings up the main dashboard menu, goes up to the top, goes all the way over to settings, goes down to the devices menu, into Bluetooth devices, what I had open at the very start of this, and in here you'll see that that Dualshock that the other player was using is still synced to the system. When a Dualshock player turns off his device from the quick menu, the PS4 still saves it in the Bluetooth devices menu, and it's still synced to the system. So in order to get rid of it, what needs to happen is that the next player who sits down on the system, no matter whether he's using a Dualshock or a wired controller or a wired stick or whatever else, needs to go in here, select that old Dualshock, press the options button, and choose this option over here that says forget device. Once he does that, that old Dualshock is completely out of the system. So just delete all the controllers from the Bluetooth devices menu, and then go back into the game, then pick your characters, then start your match. Because if you do that properly, then when that old Dualshock bumps up against something and accidentally hits the PlayStation button, nothing happens. In fact, the only thing that can happen is you'll see a little notification pop up in the corner that says, please resync this controller if you want to use it again. And that'll only show up once and then never again. So again, to recap, in order to prevent an old player's controller from interrupting your match, that means that when you sit down on the station, no matter what kind of controller you use, whether it's wired or wireless, before you start your match, you need to go into this Bluetooth device's menu and delete all the old Dualshocks. You need to do this because a Dualshock user cannot delete his own controller from the system, even if he tries. So that means that because he can't do it, you need to know and remember to do it yourself.